Sure,
Once,
take it ahead.
yes, let me check the stream from my end. Roger that. Oh, मैं शायद यूट्यूब लिंक नहीं मिल रहा उजैर को लिंक प्रोवाइड करते हैं गॉट इट गॉट इट एक्चुअली सर हमने यूट्यूब पे फर्स्ट टाइम ये शुरू किया है उससे पहले
Okay,
जूम पे करते थे एंड
okay, okay.
सम ऑफ द टर्न्स वांटेड lecture in video so
All right.
just because yeah
YouTube Live, though I also haven't done before. I've had Google meetings
mm-hmm.
and stuff like that, but I'm also doing this for the first time. That is why I was facing some problems with my laptop. I had to, log in with my phone then.
Yeah, we are live on YouTube.
Hmm.
Just
All right.
let's see what's yeah sir we have 31 number of interns watching us now
Okay.
so good evening we are getting comments here so sir first we will go through the lecture and in the end for the 5 minutes we will reply the questions so
Sure, sure, sure. So,
once we get sufficient number of views we will start it
yeah. Okay. So,
once
are we
we
good to go now?
I think we should wait a while so
Sure,
at
sure.
least we reach above 50
All right, all right. That's going to be fine.
yes
Yeah.
good evening everyone okay I think we should start now so we
Sure.
are on the
Yes.
time and we should start now yes sir
Absolutely. Yes.
so let me introduce you sir
Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, uh, my name is Rian, and I am your internship consultant. You are watching here. So, just because of a few interns were saying that they cannot join today, just because of they are suffering through bad internet connections or they are just in a way towards any destination. So we thought to make this stream on YouTube so everyone can avail this opportunity to learn this or those who are missing this can again watch it So we have a great personality and assistant professor with us, the name Mr. Saif Hussain. So let me completely introduce sir. Sir Saif Hussain did his schooling at Companion School, Bhopal. Actually, sir, I think sir is from Bhopal. He is
Yeah,
LLM. He did his LLM from Hyderabad. NALSAR, sir, NALSAR,
yeah. Nalsar,
sir,
Hyderabad.
Nalsar, Hyderabad.
Right.
So currently working as assistant professor at JLU, Bhopal.
JLU. Yeah.
Yes. And he is also a member of Legal Aid Committee and Center of Criminology, Victimology, and Compensation of Jurisprudence. So thank you very much, sir, joining us. It's a player for us that personality like you addressing us for this session. So it's over to you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure joining you all. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this introductory lecture towards human rights and the Right for Rights program. As we all know, that this lecture would be as an introduction towards the very concepts of what human rights are and how human rights operate in their realm themselves. So basically, first of all, starting off correctly with the basics, what human rights are. So basically, human rights can be defined as the rights that are possessed by human beings. That's the very basic definition that can be given to human rights. And basically, the rights that are possessed by a person who, by virtue of his being born in this species, that is the Homo sapien species, gets are your what you call today as human rights. Uh, in spite of that, these rights are universal and they cannot be separated from a human being just because someone is born with these rights, and these are inalienable, inseparable, and are universal. Universal meaning that they are the same throughout the world, anywhere a person can be. His human rights do not change according to his geographical or territorial, existence. Uh, so basically, let me first of all take you through how human rights in themselves evolved, and then we may go to other questions, answering your queries and everything. So basically, human rights, uh, as we uh, as the things existed in history, uh, which was called the state of nature. Uh, Back then, there did not be any sort of rights for anyone. There was no equality. There were certain people that were in power that would control everything. There were no rights to the common man. Uh, so basically, these the no such notion of such any of the rights that people were born with was or existed at that time. So basically, the first instance that we see about the recording of basically human rights would be uh, about 539 BC, when a great conqueror, Cyrus the Great, he's called as so. In 539 BC, he conquered Babylon, and this was the first move that he did after conquering Babylon, was that he abolished slavery. And the other thing that he did was he gave the freedom of religion to everyone, irrespective of the fact that any person would belong to any group. He would give them freedom of religion. So this was basically the first instance where human rights basically breathed their first breaths. And being as revolutionary as it can sound, uh, a famous artifact of that time, Cyrus cylinder, has also been recorded. Whatever was, the rights that were talked about by Cyrus the Great were noted down on a clay, sort of a cylinder, by those that were affected by his rule, and they laid them out in basically written form, and that is like the first recordings of human rights that we as of now know. Then basically 539 BC, we are talking about 6th century BC basically. Then the idea of these rights basically spread throughout the world. Uh, Came to Rome in like the 27th BC, where the people in the Roman civilization, or basically the rulers in the Roman civilization, they came to know about, or they discovered the fact that people follow certain rights that are not provided anyhow or by any sort of a statute or an order of the king, which came to be later known as the natural rights. Absolutely, the Romans are contributed towards developing the concept of a natural law. So natural rights basically came from this sort of part of the world. Uh, Later centuries, 1,000 years, basically the first uh, recording when it comes down to a proper human civilization would be the 1215 Magna Carta, where actually the rights were written down, and uh, the paradigm shift of rights just being available to those who ruled and not the ruled basically came uh, striking down, and there were certain rights that were given to the people as well. But obviously the Magna Carta did not in itself blow up like it was supposed to, because it was such a paradigm shifting concept of rights being given to everyone and people being treated equally. Obviously it did not blow up as it was required to. But then, later years, 1689 came your British Bill of Rights. Then finally, 1776 was your American Independence Declaration. Then again, which talked about certain inalienable rights that could not be taken away from the citizens. Anyhow, then another that was a remarkable historical movement was your French Revolution, uh, which came into fruition in the 1789, where natural law, the concept of natural law, came into being as natural rights. French Revolution is also very important when it comes down to when you're reading the jurisprudence for the Indian Constitution as well, because we've adopted a lot of words like justice, liberty, equality, fraternity from French Revolution into our preamble as well. So French Revolution actually holds a lot of water when it comes down to your Indian Constitution. Then, obviously, 1789 French Revolution itself also did not, do something like globally, because in the 1800s, when Napoleon came and the conquering of almost half of the globe, more than half of the globe actually, by Napoleon, uh, was another move of trampling these rights that could be given equally to everyone. And obviously, those in power would not bear the fact that some person else than them would have rights equal to them. So basically, this 1800s Napoleons, then your Napoleons, and your then basically the first uh, huge, or the biggest impact and the biggest need of change was felt after 1914, when the First World War began. Uh, your First World War continued till 1919, and this was regarded as a blatant, uh, you know, violation of fundamental rights, where fundamental rights were trampled on regularly without any, sort of discretion. And ultimately, the nation that faced the uh, most of the repercussions of the First World War were obviously Germany, facing all the reparations of the war under the Treaty of Versailles, and ultimately going through a lot of hardships, going through a lot of debts, which resulted basically 1920 of coming into force of the League of Nations, which was again to basically not let any such incident like the First World War happen again, or let history repeat, to protect the fundamental rights and everything. But ultimately, we know the League of Nations failed miserably when in 1939, another World War, the Second World War, which was on a much larger scale than the First World War, happened again. Uh, we know obviously what happened in Germany with the rise of Hitler and the massacres of the Jews, the total abomination that was with the Nazi concentration camps and torture camps and everything like that. So almost with the first and the Second World War, we have almost a death toll above 90 million, and right to life that today we consider as an essential fundamental or fundamental right as well, although being a human right, uh, was trampled upon for at the whims of a few in power. So basically, after that, 1945, the everything Nazi and the concentration camps and everything, we saw another blatant sort of what do we say, rampant over the fundamental rights. That was in 1945, the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki by the United States, obviously, and that was again that happened in August, and this was basically the final nail in the coming into end of the League of Nations, and this was a time when change was required the most, and then came in 1945 October, the United Nations, and by which actually in 1946 again the League of Nations was disbanded and all of its power was given to the United Nations basically, and United Nations came basically into force with the objective, and I quote, to reaffirm faith in fundamental human rights, in dignity and worth of human person. Obviously, United Nations did come into force, but things were a little haphazard as to what was to be done, as to be, prevent another war or such massive level of trampling of human rights. So, under the supervision of Miss, Eleanor Roosevelt, obviously came your UDHR, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, in 1948. Obviously, this was a big decision or a big, basically a document, because this was the behemoth, the highest point, the apex point of human rights reaching somewhere where in a document there were 30 rights that were enumerated, which were called human rights, and were regarded as universal and indispensable and inseparable, and all the things like that. So basically, the French concept of natural rights came into force as human rights. Obviously, before these 30 rights actually came into existence, there were a lot of controversies because nobody had an exact definition how human rights would be perceived by the world, because the concept of rights under the American Constitution were different. That in the French Revolution were different. Obviously, that which was uh, under the British regime were obviously different. But obviously, these 30 rights came into being also with the motive of not being trampled upon and becoming universal and inseparable. Also, there were certain later things that came into force that became the Bill of Rights, the your ICCPR, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and ICSCR, obviously the International Covenant on Economic Social Rights, and this triangle of UDHR plus ICCPR and ICSCR again becomes in turn your Bill of Rights, and basically these ICCPR and ICSCR were basically the more of a specific application of UDHR itself. There was nothing new that was brought, but obviously, uh, even after your UDHRs and your ICCPRs and everything, the human rights did not stop being violated or being trampled upon. And the reason being that these human rights were not exactly justiciable. These were written down on a piece of paper just as a guiding star, a shining light, nothing more than that. When it comes down to the Constitution of India, we have had uh, a distinction between human rights and fundamental rights, whatever have been incorporated in the constitution and being made justiciable, those human rights have become our fundamental rights. And the major difference being that fundamental rights can still be justiciable, can be brought into their discrimination or their violation can be still brought into a court of law, but not exactly human rights unless the countries in themselves individually took actions towards solidifying this concept of human rights. Before this, nothing of that sort came into existence. Uh, even after your Bill of Rights, there were a lot of human right violations. For example, the apartheid law or the apartheid rules in the South Africa, or even if we see the Indian setup that has taken place throughout the centuries and throughout civilizations, uh, there have been casteist issues and class-based sort of discriminations against people, uh, which are nothing more than a blatant violation of human rights. But India has seen them, obviously. The world has witnessed racism on the highest level in the 21st century. Uh, Even though we seem to have abolished slavery, but almost twice as many people even today are under the shackles of slavery as they were back in the 1800s. So this obviously throws light on the fact that human rights, although have been written down, have been characterized as inseparable and universal, but still they go on to become trampled upon and violated time to time. So basically, this is how human rights have always worked. Even if we see for today, human rights have been violated on a daily basis. Wherever you can turn your eye, not the matter of fact that developing countries are the most suffered, or the developed countries have do not have such violations. That would not be true. Racism can be seen in the most developed of countries. Uh, Poverty and hunger-stricken countries, you'll see human rights violations on a daily basis when there is a human right to food and shelter. Why almost one child dies in 5 seconds because of hunger or being malnourished. So again, there have been uh, basically loads and loads of laws and these human right papers and evidences, but not exactly the enforcement that comes on, uh, that would deliver the people, that would ultimately help them and would get them past this. Obviously, like even if we see examples of today, whatever has happened throughout the Rohingya crisis, whatever has happened in China with the Uyghur Muslims, and whatever has happened in Afghanistan and the Iran hijab crisis as well. These all are modern examples of human right violations that take place on a daily basis, that cannot be yet, though we have such behemoths of legislations, or rather conventions like UDHR and ICCPR and ICSCR, but still we do not seem to find any solutions as to modern problems that we should have, that we as nations, when we came together as the United Nations, uh, we promised to each other that this would be ultimate deliverance of justice. But ultimately, it is only us as uh, diligent citizens, open minds, free from all shackles, that we can only be aware first of all, and then we can talk about protecting ourselves and our fundamental rights and the rights of others. Thank you.
So, sir, the lecture is done. So we might take
We can
question
take some time
answers.
for, yeah, we can take some time for questions.
Yeah. So Sajjad Akbar is asking that, sir, UN is under nepotism. I think this type of question is may take a bit
Please,
kind
please.
of personal opinion
No, no, no.
because
That is
maybe
like very sort of a biased, Mr. Sajjad. If you're, going into the history of United Nations, you cannot be talking about things like that. Obviously, you have to be looking into it on a broader perspective or from a neutral sort of a ground. And such statements we should avoid as, being students of human rights. Yeah.
so the next question is from the liar fitness. What about human rights related to those people who are suffering in Afghanistan and Ukraine?
Absolutely. Like I said, I did quote about the fact that whatever happened in Afghanistan, an elected government was overthrown by a rebellious group, and even whatever is going on in Russia and Ukraine, you must have heard that Vladimir Putin has been declared as a war criminal by the International Criminal Court and everything. But after all, what these human rights are is the fact that they are not justiciable, and ultimately, when actually these human rights are violated, not a lot can be done about that. That is why Austin sometimes, John Austin sometimes proves uh, right in his point when he used to say that international law is nothing more than a soft law, because not a lot of things can be done when international law is violated. Absolutely, because the sovereignty of the individual nations is above everything. I hope this answers your question.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So the next question is, does human rights have retrospective effect?
Even if human rights do have a retrospective effect, what can be gained of it? I don't think anything, because when we even talk about like prospective nature of human rights after 1948, even if you see such violations after everything we've made under certain conventions and governance, like everything we have enacted, there is nothing that can be done, even if we have human rights having a retrospective effect. Like for example, if we talk about 1948 UDHR, and we try to retrospectively operate it like back from the First World War or Second World War, there would be nothing that can be achieved by the same. So even if we assume that human rights do have a retrospective nature, which obviously, when we see the development, however the human rights have evolved, that can be true. Yeah.
So the next question is from Adil Muhammad Sayyed.
Yeah.
What do you think of rights of under trial in relation to the sedition cases and crime of severe nature?
Yeah. Uh, Basically now, like for example, if we discuss about the sedition law in India as well, uh, sedition has been characterized as an archaic British law by a lot of jurists, and there have been loads and loads of petitions as well, striking off sedition, which was actually brought, not even in the original Indian Penal Code, was brought afterwards, like 10 years after, when the Britishers thought that anything that would be against the established government, or basically the British government, that would be anything said or done, or anything which basically puts them in a bad sort of shape, would amount to sedition. And this, ultimately, we are still under sort of suffering with the fact that whenever a person would raise his voice against the government, uh, he can be incarcerated, incinerated, with the fact that seditious materials have been published or have been circulated, even if he has been under constitutional limitations, under the limitations of morality, and has not, tried to ignite uh, sort of a ruse against the government, still people do get incarcerated with the sedition laws. And obviously, there are human rights, but like I said, the justiciability missing from human rights almost makes them oblivious at times. So yeah,
And sir, including it, Adil Muhammad was asking for crime of severe natures
yeah.
in connection with
even even
solutions.
even if we talk about the crimes of severe nature, obviously, see, when a person is incarcerated under any sort of allegations or accusations, or even if we consider convictions, there have been a lot of times where uh, people who have been incarcerated, who are doing jail time, who are inmates in prisons, have failed have failed to observe human rights. There have been violent crimes inside prisons. There have been reports of the basically the executive not performing their duties very diligently. There have been reports of violations by the executive themselves, the police themselves, going on towards brutality. Custodial violence has been something that has never been off records, that has always been uh, on radar. But such things can be addressed to a certain point. But obviously, the human rights of a prisoner or someone who is incarcerated for a severe crime ultimately finds their resort under the Constitution of India. Yes.
Hope so. The question is answered. The next question is from Suparja. Sir,
Hmm.
is unborn child in the mother's womb also considered as human and under human rights law?
Absolutely. Someone being inside a human womb would also be a human. Like, if we do not go into like something like Greek mythology or Indian Hindu mythology, we won't be demigods, roaming around the roads. So basically, uh, obviously, the child inside the mother's womb does have his human rights as well. But obviously, those come into fruition when he actually comes into existence. But yeah, uh, this can never be said that a child in the mother's womb or and Ventra Samere would not have any particular rights. Yeah.
Next question is from Sujit Kumar Singh. Sir,
Hmm.
you say UN is custodian of human rights, but when it comes to human rights of Afghanistan, whose rights has been crushed for decades, and human rights of
Hmm.
I think you some
Okay, okay,
the
I'm reading them the
you sure
same. The Uyghur, he's talking about the Uyghur Muslims, and the UN says nothing.
watch you
Then again, what was the guy's name? Mr. Sujit. Uh,
Sujit.
Obviously, now, see the overall problem that comes when we talk about this scenario, like whatever it is, like you talk about the violation of human rights in Afghanistan, or maybe you are addressing the issue of Uyghur Muslims in China, that they are forced into concentration camps and being converted to communists, or you talk about the Russian-Ukraine war, how there have been violations of fundamental human rights. But obviously, when it comes down to international law automatically at times becomes a weak law. Uh, Obviously, because of the fact that the individual countries have their own sovereignties, and that sovereignty cannot be compromised at any cost. Although we do have such international communities like the International Criminal Court or the ICJ for that matter, but uh, obviously where when they give decisions, those are binding a lot of times and to a lot of extent. But obviously, something or anything that compromises with the sovereignty of a country, or a free country basically, that is recognized by everyone, is automatically would amount to a violation of their own supremacy. So basically, we may talk about these human rights violations that keep on going on throughout the world, and like how you read every day about human rights violation in every corner of the world. and how you think the world is so bad with these things. But at the end of the day, human rights and this international law, basically, there are not a lot of repercussions that go into when someone violates a fundamental right or a fundamental human right, basically. So.
The next question seems very interesting from Anushka.
Mhm.
How can just writing about these issues of human rights we can bring a
Mhm.
change when we need implementation more than just talking about it on a piece of paper?
Absolutely. Very good question, Anushka. Obviously, we cannot be just sit idle by just, writing down certain rights and calling them human rights on a piece of paper, and then think that, uh, you know, everything would go merrily, and, the human rights violations would stop and everything like that. But obviously, the implementation level on which that we need the human rights to be implemented, that has always been missing. But like when we talk about the individual jurisdictions of our countries, like they do have their own legislations throughout their countries, like the European Union in itself, they have their human rights charter. When we talk about India, we do have a human rights act that is from the 1990s, that provides for the establishment of a National Human Rights Commission and for States Human Rights Commission. Obviously, there have been what we can do by writing about these things is create awareness, first of all, because like the violation of human rights can stay, unnoticed, unreported, and that is the whole point of there is otherwise there is no point if there is no awareness created. And then again, this repetitive statement that I've been saying for like a lot of questions, I guess all the questions, that ultimately when we talk about human rights, their exact enforcement cannot be guaranteed just because of the fact that international law, even if it sees that there is a state that is an offender, or that has been a violative of fundamental human rights, they can not uh, do much about it, because the main thing that the UN goes through would be called what we call diplomacy, and cutting off someone's economic relations, trade relations. That is the extent of it. Like, you cannot start punishing countries for violation of fundamental rights, because ultimately every country or every territory is sovereign in themselves, and you cannot take away that sovereignty enforcing a sort of an international organization over them. So yeah, I get your point that how they can become oblivious at times, but this is the best that we got as of now.
We are getting a lot of questions, but Sakshi Siani, how to make people aware of human rights in rural areas at an individual level?
At an individual level, obviously, see, first of all, we need to be educated. Obviously, the human rights, like for example, if we talk about India, uh, under the Human Rights Act, there are regular campaigns and camps sort of in rural areas that are set up by the government themselves, that they are informed about their fundamental rights, their human rights that they possess automatically, and the human rights that they possess by just being born in this species. Campaigns obviously help a lot. Then again, it is we as citizens and not the government that would be responsible for creating a society that would be aware of human rights or the fundamental rights, for that matter. Obviously, we as citizens, we need to be diligent in ourselves. We need to be aware of the fact where fundamental rights are violated. And obviously, rural India, or basically the rural parts of any other country, are obviously the most vulnerable parts of the country, and they need to be first of all made aware of, and then we can talk about the violations in the rest of the parts of the country. Yeah.
So the next question is from Irshad Ali. Sir, how does a human rights foundation or an NGO of the same sort of play a role in realm of upholding basic tenets of human rights?
Hmm. Right, right, right. Also, there is another question by Mr. Sujit Kumar. What are the checks and balances which can be put on the government to prevent false or motivated incarceration? I would like to answer that first, and then we'd move on to Mr. Ishad Ali. Uh, Basically, the checks and balances that have been provided under the Constitution or the concept of constitutionalism, that is basically the checks and balances that are put on the government. Obviously, when you are the citizens or any other person who are provided with fundamental rights in the constitution of any country, like let's suppose we are talking about India. When the constitution mentions certain fundamental rights, they are basically a sort of a check and balance over the powers of the government. They are basically limitations to the power of the government that uh, in using their legislative instruments they cannot trample upon such fundamental rights, or there are limitations over the powers and authorities. And obviously the concept of constitutionalism, the concept of the constitution keeping every organ of the state in their own realms and not letting them trample upon the territory of the other organ. So this is how the checks and balances works. Now coming to Mr. Shad Ali, sir, how does the Human Rights Foundation or NGO of the same sort play a role in the realm of upholding the basic tenets of human rights? Basically, when we talk about NGOs and everyone, these guys just when they receive complaints of violation of human rights, or they observe them on their own so motu, they do take action. The main thing that they do is conduct camps, awareness camps, so that people may first of all know about their rights, and if their rights are actually getting violated. If the rights are getting violated, when you reach out to an NGO, they do go through uh, um, you know they do go through a proper procedure where they invoke the Human Rights Act, obviously, where they go to the State Human Rights Commission and to the National Human Rights Commission for the redressal of various complaints. And unfortunately, these most of these complaints are by those from the lower strata of the society. Basically, the socially and educationally backward classes often feel these fundamental rights still being violated, although we may think as if like practices like older practices or ancient practices like untouchability and discrimination against the lower classes has we have wiped it out, but that would ultimately be an ignorant statement, because we can still see these violations taking place on a daily basis. So basically, the NGOs and these human right working wings, they are basically your channel towards ultimately the Human Rights Act, or the uh, National Human Rights Commission or the State Human Rights Commission, obviously. Yeah.
Maybe the next question is for me,
Hmm.
Vikash, from Vikash. When our proper internship gonna start? Vikash,
Hmm.
what is meant by proper internship? Your internship is being started and everything is being noted. And after these basic sessions, we will allow you to make reports, and we will allow you and we will assign you with assignments to write on human rights violation in your local area. Or maybe we can give you a certain topic to write on it. Okay, so these lectures are very basic, and this one is very basic for those who are especially from not the field of law. So
Absolutely.
please go to these sessions, and the next session I will explain everything after this Q&A. Let sir answer the basic questions first. And sir, the next
Absolutely.
question is, people's fundamental rights gets infringed, so they often become terrorists. But joining such terror acts also result in infringement of other people's right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Is this a question or a suggestion, or uh, let
Okay.
us
Let me try to answer it in a not so offensive way. Obviously, see, yeah, people's fundamental rights are violated at times, and obviously, no, the becoming a terrorist or taking law into your hands does not automatically, give you the right to, snatch your fundamental rights from someone. Obviously, there are procedures that have been laid down that need to be followed when your fundamental rights are violated. India being one of the our country being like one of the greatest when it comes down to protection of fundamental rights, where moving to or moving the Supreme Court for violation of a fundamental right is a fundamental right in itself. When it comes down to Article 32, the right to constitutional remedies. So basically, the your redressal of your fundamental right violation is also your fundamental right. This shows the beauty of how beautifully the constitution was framed, and how not to basically become a terrorist when you have a proper channel to get your fundamental rights redressed. Yeah,
So maybe we take the last question, as we have promised you
absolutely.
to join for just 40 minutes
Yeah.
and this session's timing. Sir, what Sheikh, sir, what are your thoughts relating to leading cases Chatterjee versus State of Norway in 2011 relating to supreme suppress of human rights?
uh, Mr. Sheikh, obviously, what can be the thoughts, like this has been a repetitive statement that has been made by me, like a lot of times. There have been fundamental violation of human rights throughout the world in almost every country that you can see. Recently, if you call out your Rohingya crisis, or your Afghanistan's, your Russia, Ukraine's, your Uyghur Muslims, China, everywhere there
Even
have been,
USA.
in the US, obviously, the Black Lives Matter movement was on a very basically apex mode, like in the past 2 years or three. So the world has seen uh, the violation of human rights at a level, at a global level. Basically, things go out. People have scrutiny on a global level, but basically the things do not happen just because of the fact that international law would not, actually compromise with someone's sovereignty, or the country that demands sovereignty over a territorial jurisdiction. So I guess all of these questions can be simply answered by the fact that international law automatically would, uh, get into your sovereignty stuff, and international law would not be actually an enforceable law. So yeah, I did read about the Chatterjee versus State of Norway case, where there was this foster care child was taken into by the Norwegian facilities. But automatically, when it comes down to a territorial jurisdiction, obviously the government that is ruling the territory is the supreme law, which is also called the law of the land, and or rather lex loci, when it comes down into legal terms. And ultimately, nothing or any one can, enforce their authority or sort of a redressal over other territories that claim sovereignty. Yeah,
So maybe, sir, we have taken a lot of time of you, and
absolutely. That's fine. Mm.
so it's honor being here for us. So may leave, and maybe you have a tough routine out there. So that was an honor for us uh, to be here
Absolutely, it was a
with
privilege for
you.
me as well,
And
speaking for you all, and I'm more than glad to be joining you anytime soon, whenever you would like to call me. Obviously, there were comments about the
thank you.
fact that slides and presentations were not used. To those comments, I would like to address the fact that this was a very sort of an elementary lecture. You like a very sort of an introductory form of a lecture. You would not be needing any sort of documents or presentations to be, in place. Obviously, when we dive deeper into the concept of human rights, when we're discussing case studies and stuff, obviously there, your point is right. Obviously, you should be getting certain presentations and everything. But obviously, this was a good session. I guess it was helpful to you all somehow, and would love to be a part of this program, the Right Your Rights, in the near future as well. Thank you.
Thank
and
you,
I would
sir.
like to sign off.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Sure,
Okay.
sure. So, I'm going to answer a few questions here. Hafsa Masood, let me tell you that this question is some sort of introductory session, and we will have slides in next lecture when I'm going to teach you the SEO, how to write an article which is better for internet, which is internet friendly and SEO friendly. Many of you who have a CS background or IT background may know this, but as of we have other students from law field or many other fields, so they might know this, and without knowing this, I don't think so any of us can make a human rights report or make an article which is able to be uploaded on internet. So yeah, we will consider each and everything. We will have slides, we will have presentation and everything. So maybe we should end it now. In next session, maybe tomorrow. Let me know, should we put it in tomorrow or any other day? Suggest in the group. So bye. We'll meet next time. Allah Hafiz.